Art historians and finance don't usually go together. But what I had in mind for our session really is just kind of helping you get a better understanding, basic business model, if you will, under which our institutions operate. And so that's why I call this College Finances 101. So what I've got here is a pie chart, not for any specific institution. It's a sort of example. Most schools, the basic division of proportion of expenses is pretty similar, regardless of how wealthy they are. On the revenue side, that's where there's a bigger difference because of the impact of endowment. So example one is from a rather less well-endowed school. By contrast, here's a sort of pie chart for a more well-endowed institution. And I can certainly recall as a faculty member myself saying almost this exact line, why, when you hear of some investment on campus that's being made, why did they, the administration, spend so much money on campus repairs or some expenditure on campus when it's more important to increase faculty staff compensation? And that's a very legitimate question to ask. If you decide you're not going to spend, let's say, $1 million on a whole series of roofs that need to be fixed on campus, and instead you're going to plow that into the compensation budget, that's a commitment you're now making sort of in perpetuity, if you will, in the compensation budget. The takeaway from this point I want you to recognize is the major difference between a one-time expenditure and making an incremental increase in compensation which is baked into the budget and has reoccurring commitments. The comprehensive fee, and that's sort of all in the sticker price of everything. Discount rate, that's the institutional gift aid portion, as opposed to all other forms of aid. We've got two schools, representative schools, one charging $40,000, one charging $32,000, two different discount rates, 55 and 44, and you can end up with the exact same net tuition revenue, but one has a higher sticker price. So there's this constant jockeying, if you will, of trying to figure out what the right positioning strategy is for the sticker price in order to make the net tuition revenue work. Probably fair to say that the sticker price is determined, it's entirely a kind of a marketing tool. It's not really driven by anything other than that, and what's underlying it is the financial aid strategy and the budgetary needs for a target for the net tuition revenue. If you manage to drive down the discount rate, you manage to raise the relative proportion of revenue you generate on a per-student basis, it makes it harder to achieve, for example, socioeconomic diversity. It makes it harder to, because you're offering less financial inducement to come to the college. And so it's this balancing act on either side of that, playing out against the backdrop of the decision-making process of 17 and 18-year-olds. Trustees are entrusted, uses the phrase guardians of the future. They're weighing the needs of the present against the future needs of future students and ensuring that those are kept in balance. The goal is to set your spending policy, and let's say it's 5%, to set a spending policy and an endowment distribution rate that you are gaining a sufficient investment return that will allow you to take out your 5%, and then there will be additional investment return above and beyond that that you can leave in the corpus so that when you come around the next year, the endowment's grown enough so that your revenue is actually higher the next year, at the minimum in line with inflation. The bigger your endowment, the more entry you have into alternative investments, which tend to be much, much more volatile. Much greater upside, but also downside. Note the difference in volatility between Macalister's endowment and Lake Forest's endowment. That the percentage of valuation, I mean, this is where being well endowed actually served institutions not well in the downturn, because the valuation, the percentage decline in value of the endowment at the height of the stock market downturn was much, much higher at the most well-endowed institutions. Balancing the budget is one part of the picture. Financial equilibrium, you've got to be balancing not only the revenue and expense and all of that, but you've got to be making sure that you are continuing to invest sufficiently into the human capital. We must, for residential colleges, continue to invest in the physical plant to ensure that that retains its perception in the marketplace of its value, and then retaining the endowment purchasing power over time. I mean, there's no point doing the first three if you're drawing from the endowment at an unsustainable level, because 10 years from now, that revenue is then going to dissipate and you're going to then impact everything else. So it's keeping each of these, one's attention to them, and keeping them in balance.